I want to talk about what it means to be a man. And the reason that I even want to explore this subject is number one, primarily because there's a war on masculinity in the world today. And if you're a young person and you don't think that's true, then that's because you are already indoctrinated through the inundation of this anti-masculine propaganda that you've been raised around. That's surrounded you ever since basically your inception, I guess, if you're young. Literally, and I've spoken on this before, so I'm not going to get into great detail about this facet of it, but literally our technology is killing us. Our technology is killing us. And the biggest problem with everything, all the problems that we have here in the United States in particular, I can't speak on other places, haven't been anywhere else for many years, is that we don't do anything about any of this. And that's why it continues and why it propagates, flourishes. We don't do anything about any of it. It goes in one ear and out the other, just like you may think about these things if you're watching this video, but when the video is over, you move on to another topic, and then you get on with your day, or get on with the task at hand in your life, your immediate life. But there are studies that back all of this up. I mean, this is fact. It's conspiracy fact. It's not conspiracy theory. Everything from frogs here in the United States, male frogs, that produce eggs, and these eggs are fertile. So basically these frogs are hermaphroditic fish in our freshwater tributaries, which are the male species is on a decline, but we're now seeing these hermaphroditic fish in place of pretty much the percentage of the male population that has disappeared. So these things, as go nature, so goes the human race. As goes nature, that will be reflected and seen in our lives as human beings. So it's not like we're in this disconnected state from the ecosphere. We all live in the same world. We share these resources. I know that humankind, we tend to think that we're so superior and that it's all for us, everything's for us, and the hell with everything else here. And it's that mentality, that outlook, that will be our undoing, and that currently is our undoing. But we still completely want to ignore it. Well, you're only going to be able to ignore it for so long until their day comes when you look around and say, didn't there used to be a thing called men on this planet? Didn't there used to be a trait described as masculine or masculinity? Wonder what happened to that. And one of the things, we also need to look up these environmental endocrine disruptors. I've said it till I'm blue in the face, but how many of you guys actually know what it is? How many of you guys have actually Googled it? And now, welcome to the world of 5G to make it even worse. As goes nature, as go the other living creatures in this ecosphere, so it goes for us as well. So it goes for us as well. You're not going to selectively have a huge negative impact on other creatures in this ecosphere, in this domain, without us as human beings sharing that negative impact for ourselves in our own structures. And the reason that this has come into the forefront of my mind, I contemplated about a few of the responses negative responses to a video that I had last made talking about a man at the gym who's 62 years old, in very good shape, but nonetheless 62 years old, who approached a woman who is also 50 and comes from a background where she knows what it is to be victimized, and we'll leave it at that. Like I said, this is gorilla with a cause, man. Majority of us on here have experienced something somewhere along the way that others may consider to be a drastic, life-changing, world-altering experience. Something very impactful. A lot of people with PTSD on here, a lot of combat veterans, a lot of law enforcement officers, a lot of every kind of, I'm just stating reality, I'm not being boastful, but we have a huge contingency of men here that fit the bill to what some males look at and would label alpha. And that's certainly not to say that these men that are such as I'm describing, they don't refer to themselves in this light. I mean, when was the last time you heard a man that everybody would point to and say, man, that guy's an alpha male? And they may not outwardly say that, but you understand exactly the mindset and what I'm speaking toward. When was the last time you heard one of these guys proclaim themselves as such? They just don't. They're living life. They're doing their thing. They don't stop to think about that. Is this alpha behavior? Am I an alpha? So that's the first indication. That's the first thing, between the genuine article and the poser. It's just like Jeff McVicker said once, long ago. He said, you can put a dozen of the baddest MFers all in one room together and you won't have any problem. People will be very polite and respectful and smile and nod at each other. No trouble. But as soon as you put one fake MFer in there with them, now you're going to have trouble. Now you're going to have a problem. And if you understand that, then you understand what I'm talking about. And if you don't, I can't explain it to you. Maybe one day you'll understand it, how true that is. But some of the responses that I got, and of course I'm referring to those I consider negative responses and remarks, and I appreciate all these responses, even the negative ones. I don't get a whole lot of negative stuff on here, but I do care about everybody. So even those people who make these negative remarks, that indicates things to me, in my opinion, within my belief system and how I move through this world and my life experiences. It says to me that they have an issue that maybe we could talk about, and maybe it'll have a positive influence or effect on them, and maybe it won't. Certainly they are free to go through life feeling and thinking however they choose or however they may, and never really second guess it. They don't have to do that. But for my 2 cents worth, when people start saying things like defending a woman or defending a lady's honor is some kind of this modern vernacular where some fringe person thinks that women are a horrible, terrible thing, and that they've sworn them off, and that they are, they make up all these names, this nomenclature, white knighting, and all this other shit. Why do other people latch on to these things and follow these types of individuals and their thought process? How do you relate to that? Because you've been jilted? Because you made a poor selection that landed you in a place you didn't want to be, and experience, of course, was not good. Processed is not a good one. And rather than look inward and try to find where you have liability or where you own that outcome in whatever way, they project it, because that's the easiest thing for a guy to do. They project it outward, and it's always the other person's fault. It's always the other person's fault. And to the extent that I'll even say this, if I'm into something that's nobody's business and I don't want anybody to know about, and I confide in someone, and I tell them or I let them see something I don't want out there, or I don't, for whatever reason, it might be a illegal activity, it might be just something that I'm not very proud of, it could be I'm only a human being who's speaking generalities. But if that person then goes and shoots his mouth off or betrays that trust, is it that person's fault? Partly, but where does that leave me? How do I grow from that? How do I benefit in such a way that I will not go on to make the same mistake again? Well, by owning that. I have to own that. I'm the one that misplaced my trust. I'm the one that, I gave them the ability to do me the harm. I gave that away. So I have to look inward, because looking outward and projecting, that's just deflecting, but that doesn't really move me forward in any way at all. In any way at all. It just leaves me stagnant. So in every situation, I believe that I need to see part of it that's laid at my feet, in so much as the blame. Right. So, like I said, if I didn't give that person that ability, they couldn't have done that, right? They weren't psychic, they didn't have a dream or a vision. I shared with them. I made that election. And that was the undoing. That enabled them to be in a position where they could betray me in whatever way, shape, or form. Right? So that's the way I look at it. The old saying, that person may push your buttons, but they didn't put the buttons there. Well, they also wouldn't know where the buttons were if you didn't give them that insight. So that's the first part of it. That's some hard shit. That sounds very simplistic to the actual adults out there, the actual men and women who are adults. That sounds simplistic, like overly obvious, but I guarantee you that there are folks out there that, to them, they vehemently will disagree with me on that. Vehemently. You know why? Because they know when they look in the mirror that this applies to them. And rather than own that, they still deflect. And that's why you're going to have difficulty. Those are the ruts in the road that are going to turn over your apple cart. Your refusal to go around those ruts in the road, or to avoid those ruts in the road, or to compensate for them, or to see them coming. Because you're the one at the helm. You're the one that's driving. You're at the rudder. You're steering the ship. You can go around it. You don't have to crash into it. But when it gets to the place where defending a lady's honor, which is something that has been part of chivalry forever and ever, as far back as you want to go, when it gets to that point, that where defending a lady's honor is seen as something negative, or some kind of a weakness, or some kind of a flaw on a man's behalf, now you are completely losing the conceptualization, the understanding of the conceptualization of what a man actually is. So that's why this video. So what is a man? What are we? What kind of creatures are we? Well, first you have to recognize that we start the wars. For the most part, we fight the wars. We start the wars. We shed the blood. We wage the war. We fill the prisons. We commit all the violent acts, the violence. We murder. We rape. We do all these things. We own all of that. And yeah, there are outliers where there's a woman does this, woman does that. It's not even worth considering. As men, that's our domain. All that horrible, terrible shit in this world, we do. But the flip side of that is we are also protectors. We are also nurturers. We are also defenders and providers and mentors. A woman can't teach a boy to be a man. Not saying that he can't find his way with the correct guidance from a woman, like a good single mom that instills in a young man or boy good solid virtues and morals. That's going to enable that person or equip that young man to navigate the waters and find his way. Not saying that it's an impossibility, that he can't, but generally, a woman can't teach a boy to be a man. She can give him all the tools, and he can figure it out from his own from there. So men we're extremely necessary as well. And of course, you need men and you need women for the propagation and to perpetuate the species. So we're necessary. And yeah, we do all the bad, and we have to recognize we do all the bad. But there's some good we also do. Some really, really good. We also have the ability that power that we possess can also be used for good. Can also be used for good. And part of that is nurturing and protecting and defending and mentoring and trying to set a positive example and be a decent role model. And we are all flawed. We all fall short. We have this thing in us, testosterone, this hormone, and that's what makes us do a lot of all this bad shit. And it gives us the strength and the ability to also do some of the good shit. So, that's chivalry, opening the door for a lady. Holding the door, opening the door. Ladies first. Protecting and nurturing your children. Like I said, we're no bystanders. Gorilla with a cause, no bystander mentality, no bystander. That's our battle cry. And that just means that if I should see an injustice occur within my auspice, I will, and so will, all of our minions, all of our army, which we do have, of men and women. We have satellite, homegrown, grassroots cells all over the world. A pretty decent sized one in Norway, with a contingency of mostly former army guys. But we have all over the United States, but that's to be expected. And we all agree on this no bystander philosophy or approach to living, that we're engaged with other human beings. We recognize that connection, and that if any of us witness an injustice occur within our auspice, each one to our comfort level, we will at a minimum decry that or condemn that or speak up and say, hey man, you can't talk to that person that way, or you can't treat that person that way, that's not right, that's wrong. And yes, if I see a lady who is uncomfortable, needlessly uncomfortable or intimidated, or feels threatened by another man, yeah, I'm going to say something. Just like if I saw a man bullying another man. If I saw, like I mentioned before, if I saw a handicapped person being taunted or accosted or even verbally abused by someone, man or not, I'll speak up. So it's not just the ladies, it's anybody. I'm not going to watch someone torture or aggravate or torment or abuse another living thing, literally. And I have spoken up before, and I always will. It's just who I am. I was bullied when I was young. I know what it feels like. I know what it's like to feel like that you don't have a friend to turn to. I know what it feels like to feel alone. I know what it feels like to feel susceptible, vulnerable. But of course now, fast forward to today, that I have none of those considerations or fears for myself at all. I still recognize that we must be willing to make ourselves or let ourselves be vulnerable in order to have any meaningful interaction or connection to other human beings. And what I mean by that is a lot of us, we have grown into an entirely different animal as far as outward appearances would belie than what we were when we felt victimized or when we felt like we were a potential victim. Right? So when that young man who now has no confidence or no self-esteem and he's looking at the ground, he's counting the cracks in the sidewalks because he can't look people in the face. When he sees one of us walk by or walking toward him, does he see himself in you or me? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's just thankful that we let him go his way and unaccosted. People feel that way. And that's the part of it where you have to be willing. You have to be strong enough to be willing to become vulnerable, make yourself vulnerable so you're available. So that that young man does see himself in you. And so that people recognize that you're a good guy. You're one of the good guys. You're not just some big scary monster. You're a good guy, you know. And that goes for all kind of people, man. We've got so many different people. And the stories and the interactions that have played out and things I've even seen are things to be very proud of. They are noble behaviors. They're honorable. They're honorable. And falling within that realm is defending a lady's honor. Absolutely 100%. Now, are all females ladies? Certainly not. Or all males gentlemen? Certainly not. Or all males good people, good men? No, absolutely not. Or all females good people, good women? No, certainly not. But defending a lady's honor, holding the door for a lady, that should never go out of fashion. God forbid the day that those acts are seen as a weakness or a deficit. Because I'm going to tell you right now, in every situation, and a lot of our real brothers and sisters out there, you know exactly what I'm saying. You could look at it and say, am I an asset or am I a liability? Because you're one or the other. There's no middle ground, so pick a side. Are you an asset or are you a liability? So what footprint will you leave? That's all I want to say about that. If you get it, you get it. And if you don't, you don't. You guys take care. Have an awesome, beautiful, wonderful, sunny day.